What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining us once again on another coffee roaster warm-up session. Literally, we're going to be roasting in about an hour right after this episode. But yeah, today we have a really interesting topic, which was spurred from an Instagram conversation that, Sergi, you had, which we'll get into quite shortly. But before that, let's pour some brews.
Let's go. Let's do it.
What are we drinking?
Have some Nicaraguan from Trailhead, right? Trailhead, yeah, from up in Portland. Which this coffee is super interesting because the reason I got it was because we've been cupping a lot of coffee from Gold Mountain, and I saw that Trailhead was one of the roasting companies that sources from them. So, yeah, that's a whole nother concept that I'm gonna probably dive in, talking about choosing a coffee strictly with the producer in mind. Honestly, that's the first time I've ever done that. I've never looked at producers and said that. Maybe I have, but this was very evident.
Yeah, for sure. It's got a little we're saying a spice on the nose.
Yeah.
A very good seasonal coffee.
Yeah.
Something you'd release around the holiday season. That's kind of, that fits that vibe. Yeah. We got into some nice sweetness on the nose. I love when a coffee is so sweet. When you smell it, you can almost taste the sweetness. It's sticking your nose into a bag of unhealthy candy.
Yeah. That's true. It does have a candied flavor to it. And
I don't know.
I brewed it last night on pour over, and this I think came out way better.
On batch brew.
Yeah, on batch brew. Yeah, good old Breville, man. Love that machine.
Dude, yeah. We actually picked up a little Breville for the roastery. Just like a classic home, a 12 cup thing brewer or something like that. Just does a spectacular job. And so many fidgety, gimmicky, actually I want to say it's gimmicky, but it's nerdy. You can modulate the bloom time and the flow rate and all that fun stuff that we like to always talk about. So sweet. Yeah, you want to pull up a quote, the comment, and then we can get right into it.
Yeah, like you said, it started with this post by 108 gram coffee. That is Zach Specialty Coffee and Vinyl. He has some cool photos that I like on there. But he had this post, and I'm not going to read it all. Y'all should check it out. It's on his gram. But it's about perfectionism, which is a very interesting topic, especially for us. We're both Enneagram 1s, which is Enneagram 1 struggle with overthinking things, being perfectionists, and hyper-analyzing stuff, right?
Give it a quick rundown what the Enneagram is and why that even matters. Just a quick little rundown. You can get into a rabbit hole with it.
Dude,
Let's go.
Basically, the Enneagram is, quickly, it's not a personality test, but it basically kind of breaks down how people tick, how people function. It's not a rabbit hole personality test, if you're this, you're going to act this way all the time. It basically gives you an overview of how you process information according to your childhood experience. Is that good?
Yeah, I think that works. Just so people know, a little backstory. And really, if you haven't taken the Enneagram test, I would recommend you do. It'll just give you a little bit more insight as to yourself. And Sergi and I both scored a 1 on the Enneagram, which is the basic title is perfectionist, or the other nice way of saying is a reformer.
Reformer, yeah.
Which also fits kind of. So this is why this comment kind of is super personal to us as well.
For sure. And I basically commented back about saying that for me, perfection is this journey of exploration. And I got a response to my comment, and the response was this. It was, Sergi, good stuff. I'm sure it's even more satisfying when you're roasting the coffee that goes into the cup, which he's right, it's cool. How do you separate evaluating your work from just enjoying it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a super great.
Good question.
Man, good question. A super solid question, and a good way of putting it. And really, based on because I do a lot of video work and photo work, creative work. I play a couple instruments, every once in a while, and especially in the artsy creative realm. I think that gets even more harder to deal with. Maybe not, I don't know. But like, it's really hard for me to enjoy anything that I shoot, photo wise or video wise. Like, I can pour hours and hours into a video, and still, like, literally I showed you a video an hour ago and I was watching that and I'm like, this is horrible. Like, there's so much that could be fixed, so much that could be changed. The what ifs, the man, I could do this better, that better. And it's actually hard to enjoy sometimes the, you know, the fruit of our labor.
Yeah.
Just because it's that inner critic that's like, man, you could go a step harder, better, faster, you know, whatever it is. And that separating critiquing your work and actually enjoying it, you know, pursuing perfectionism and excellence, but then also settling and being able to enjoy it for what it is really difficult. Really difficult.
I mean, I think for me, especially with photos, I can definitely understand what you're talking about. But I think specifically, I remember, like at Makeworth, Corey will give me a compliment on a pour and be like, dude, that was an excellent pour. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. You know what I mean? It's almost like I see the little bump I had. I see the little breath I had that threw my flow rate off. And then the latte art is, you know, leaning a little to one side. But for someone else, it's like, that was phenomenal. And I forget, and I don't have that ability to just enjoy what I just did in the moment right now. You know what I mean? And that's sad to me. That's very sad, because you can always get better. You know what I mean? There's always room for growth. But when you're always critiquing yourself, when you're always evaluating yourself, you lose that awe, that essence of like, man, I did this, or I'm consuming this, or I get to enjoy this like a cup of coffee.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely sucks out like the reason why you even do what you do, you know, like I know, yeah, I mean that for you, that latte art, for me, it's a lot of times like video work that I do, and it's so visual. And, you know, for your typical person, the excuse that I always come up with is like, oh, they just don't have an eye for it and they don't see all those things. Like, you know, if I show like, you know, you a video, it'd be like, oh, great. But if I show, you know, Roger Deakins, you know, Mr. Scorsese, or, you know, Steven Spielberg, and be like, hey, look at the video I made. I know he's going to look at that and just like, okay, cool. It's cute. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like where I kind of get into a rut where I'm always like, oh man, it's hard for me to take compliments from, you know, just, I don't want to say like a normal person, but just like your peers around, because I'm always comparing my work to the greats. Yeah. And I forget that, you know, Martin Scorsese didn't become great, you know, over 2 years. You know, Roger Deakins isn't shooting, you know, 1917, and he started filmmaking 2 days before he got on set. You know, like, all these greats, all these people, you know, like they've been in the industry, they've been practicing their art for years and decades, until now they're winning Oscars, you know, all these awards. And me, I'm at the beginning of kind of my craft, and I'm comparing myself to the greats. Yeah. And I'm failing to see the success of today right now. Yeah. You know, like, I'm better than I was a year ago. Mm-hmm. I can say that confidently. And actually, that's probably the mindset that we should have around something like this. Yeah. Instead of just like comparing ourselves to something like a really impossible, you know, I can't have 30 years of experience when, you know, I'm not even 30 years old. Yeah. Yeah. But I also think you brought up comparing. Like, how then would you separate comparing from being inspired? Because you have to look at, we talked about like Peter McKinnon, you know what I mean? You have to look at his photo style and kind of receive inspiration to do something like that, or something creative, without mimicking and turning inspiration into like mimic, or then being like, I'll never be good enough, I will never shoot a photo like that. Yeah, that's extremely difficult and hard. I know. I always remember what Casey Neistat, he's like a vlogger, very famous, popular. He said once, he quoted somebody else. I don't remember. I think it was that Dr. Seuss might have actually said that comparison is the thief of all joy, and man, that resonated with me so much because I'm like, yeah, every time I get into a rut of comparison, it just steals all my joy, and it steals any drive to create more, to roast more, to to get better at my craft. Instead, it like puts you in this closet and kind of strangles that creativity, and says, hey, somebody's better, so don't even try, you're just a nobody. And that's where I think is where I kind of always have to monitor myself, is like the moment that I am like gaining inspiration from great filmmakers, photographers, or whether that's in roasting. When we buy coffee from another roasting company, I'm like, dude, this is spectacular. Like, our coffees don't match up to this, but the moment when it stops pushing me to get better and fuels my passion for it, and it starts quenching my passion and starts putting me down internally, that's when I know the scale has tipped.
Yeah, totally.
It's too far, and I need to stop watching something, stop analyzing something, stop tasting coffees maybe, and just focus on my craft at hand.
Yeah, I think, like you said, comparison stifles action. It actually is like water on a fire. Like, it basically creates a bunch of smoke, a bunch of chaos, but it doesn't lead to further action. But inspiration will always like push you forward and always encourage you. It won't like condemn you. It'll just push you forward and be like, hey, you can actually create something similar or something that inspires you. And I think like basically all art, all aspects of art and creativity are pretty subjective, right? And I think especially when we start roasting coffee, like, we've noticed that one of the important parts of roasting is finding good green. And to a degree, like, the pool is about the same pool of importers that majority of big roasting companies are picking coffees up, you know what I mean? So the pool is kind of the same, but then adding that uniqueness through the roasting process and then tasting someone else's uniqueness in their roast profile and be like, man, okay, I see that. Like, I experience that. I enjoy that, going back to the post. Like, man, I don't have to sit on the reevaluation time and like process like all the time and think about it all the time. You can just receive, like, take it in, and then move forward by saying, all right, we're going to roast today. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a really big thing that it was always hard for me to accept the fact that art is subjective. And I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about that. It's like, it's hard. It's hard for me to say like, oh, you just take a phone with your, take a shot with your phone of a rock on the beach and say, oh, that's as beautiful as the Mona Lisa. That's rated the same. You could sell it for $1 million or whatever. Yeah. That's kind of difficult, but I think that's a big part that we need to keep in mind, is that with coffee, it's like, yes, taste is subjective. Especially in specialty coffee, where like, oh no, only light specialty roast. Coffee has to be light roast, and some people, if it's not a natural, it's not great, but really realizing that, like, we can cup a coffee and we're like, man, we just, this roast is just not quite there yet, like, we've had a better roast, and then you give it to somebody's like, dude, that was an insane coffee. And realizing like, art is subjective. Some of these things are subjective, and being able to find hope and inspiration in that, and peace in that for yourself. Yeah. To know that, like, we can both watch 1917, the film, and somebody can say, oh, that's the worst movie ever, and somebody can be like me, I'm like, dude, that's one of the best films I've ever watched in my life.
Yeah. Totally.
But the guy's overqualified at what he's doing, So even what the greats are doing of our time, whether that's in roasting or in filmmaking, whatever it is, that the end of the day, it's subjective, and we need to be able to realize that even though we might not like our work and what we did, somebody else does, and their opinion actually matters. Like, just because they're just a normal person, maybe they've never picked up a camera, maybe they don't have the most refined palate.
Yeah.
But them saying, "Hey, dude, that was a beautiful roast. Like, I really enjoyed that coffee," is actually something worth taking personally and saying, "Wow, thank you." You know, and that's hard.
Yeah, we're not like roasting for Q graders. You know, our demographic aren't Q graders. But also with that in mind, just because our demographic might not have a refined palate like a Q grader, still the idea of bringing and offering your best and crafting something that you've given like everything you have and understanding and meticulous like intentional movements that we make with gas changes, like air, like the whole process, even the fact that trying to make sure our bean, the green coffee, is like the right temperature before it goes, like all of those meticulous details. I think they also like kind of spur this like idea of like, man, we want to give our all, we want to give excellence, like that's the goal. Like, yes, sometimes it doesn't go as planned, but at the end of the day, like, we just want to give the best.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, that's so well said. And I think at some point you're gonna have to, I don't want to say like settle, but that's something I'm kind of learning for myself, is sometimes I have to say like, it's good. It's good, and we need to just enjoy it for what it is. It's not the best I could do. It's not the best in the world, but just take whatever you've created, whatever you've made, and be like, man, I'm content, you know? And content is also not the same as being satisfied, you know? And I think oftentimes we'll also mix those two things up. We're like, man, I have to be satisfied. Well, you know, especially for people who are perfectionists, satisfaction is kind of hard to find. I mean, may never be found, but you can be content and say, dude, this is the best I can do. I'm growing. I'm going to be a better roaster in 6 months than I was today. But as of today, this is the best I could do. On top of that, I want to go a little deeper and say perfectionism is great in some ways, because that's what drives us to be the best. You know, like we're like always like, dude, let's up the bar. Let's learn something more. Let's ask a deeper question. Let's study a little bit more, test, try all this stuff. But it's also a flaw.
Totally.
In the sense of like, it uncovers some inner insecurities.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's, dude, you dropped me on that. That's a hard one. Yeah, that's a very, very vulnerable one. It's like, basically, it's a sense of feeling like you're not good enough because you believe that your work reflects who you are. And it's judgment, man. Like, it's basically being the judge of your life, is like looking at yourself and being like, man, like, I'm not good enough. Am I really worthy enough? Like, should I really be doing that? And it's this hyper criticism that's within you that I know personally from my experience, it's never driven me to be a better person. It actually, like, it made me a worse person. Like, I mean, not to get, once again, like, very heavy, but, like, I've struggled with depression. You know what I mean? Times where I'm like, dude, I don't want to do anything. I'd rather not do anything because I'm probably not going to do it good enough anyway. So why not just sleep and stay in bed today? You know what I mean? Why not just go to work, clock in, clock out, and just go to bed again? Like, and I've been in those ruts. Like, you know what I mean? And that comes from this, like, very negative perspective of like basically like doom and gloom, like it's not going to get better. And I think that's the dark side of perfectionism. Like, that people want to think that, man, I'm a perfectionist because I do everything good. No, perfectionists actually think that everything they do sucks. Like, that's a very hard one.
Something I've definitely found also in myself is like it's uncovers like a lot of insecurity. And it just makes me feel like if I don't do something to the best that I can imagine, not even capable of, you may not even be capable of doing that. Like, your skill set, your resources, how much you know, like how much we know in roasting, in our, you know, photo stuff, video stuff, is limited and we're always learning, but our imagination spurs further than that. Yeah. And we say if we can't do to the greatest of our imagination, then we're not good enough. It's not worth being shared with. It's not worth putting out to the world. It's not worth actually giving to somebody to enjoy.
Yeah.
So not only are we robbing ourselves of really practicing our creativity, which is a muscle that you need to exercise. Like, I mean, for the same reason why everybody who asks us, like, hey, what should I do? I'm trying to start a roasting company. We're always like, go find a job at a roastery.
Yeah.
Go learn.
Yeah.
Why? Is because you kind of have to, it's a skill set that you need to exercise and work out and be better. And same with creativity. You'll never become a great photographer if you don't start taking crappy photos.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're stripping, this insecurity is stripping you from growing to achieve that someday. But then also it's stripping you from sharing the skills and the art and the creativity that you can share with somebody else who will enjoy it. Yeah. So you're robbing yourself of growth, but then you're also robbing somebody else of growth. Of not growth, but robbing somebody else of enjoying a piece of beautiful creative art that you might actually enjoy. You know, like it's like if we were to say, like whatever, you know, Mirror, we shouldn't start Mirror because we're not as good as, you know, Methodical or Onyx Coffee Lab or, you know, Proud Marys. We're never going to be as good as that.
Yeah.
But then imagine like we would have robbed people, all the people that we served in 2020, our first year in business.
Yeah.
How much, you know, coffee that they wouldn't be able to enjoy of what we were able to produce.
Yeah. And I mean, so listen to the conversation. We would also have robbed the producer.
Yeah.
I'm selling more coffee.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
There's so many different aspects of like, man, just don't criticize yourself so harshly. Give yourself a little bit of grace to actually move forward.
Yeah.
It benefits everybody, you and everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. As we wrap up this talk, give us 3 practical takeaways from this talk that people can just take with them.
Yeah, I would say, first off, like, remember that there's a difference between being, like, inspired and, what was the other word that we talked about? Being inspired and, like, basically copying someone and critiquing someone or being critiqued, like, that concept. Like,
or comparing.
Comparing, that's the word. Yeah, so choose inspiration over comparison. Like, allow something to drive you forward. But also with that side of the coin, like, remember that being perfect is not the goal. Like, perfection is not the goal. The goal is to give and to enjoy for yourself, but then everybody else. And then don't allow perfection to, like, you know, bring you down and take away and make you basically insecure about what you have to give to the world. Because ultimately, your art and what you're giving is better for you and everybody else.
For sure. Man, I mean, I could probably talk about that even more because we've lived this out so much, I think, in our everyday life. But we're going to wrap that up right here. Guys, thank you guys so much for joining us for another Coffee Roaster warm-up session talk. Hopefully this was of some encouragement to you guys, inspiration. Go out there, create, go try something new. Don't let perfectionism get the best of you. But yeah, go brew yourself a cup of coffee, reflect what's good, and we'll see you guys in the next one.